All right, we're about to take a trip nearly 4,500 years into the past, into the age of pyramids and pharaohs. But we're not digging for gold or treasure. No, we're looking for an idea, one that's hidden away in a single ancient scroll. And trust me, this idea completely flips the script on how we think about the birth of medicine.
So when you picture healing in ancient Egypt, what comes to mind? Probably a lot of spells, right? Mystical rituals, priests appealing to the gods. I mean, our history books are filled with stories of magic. But what if that's only half the story? What if there was real, structured science happening right alongside it? Well, the answer is waiting for us inside this document, the Edwin Smith Papyrus. It's a 4,500-year-old scroll, and what's written on it is definitely not what you'd expect. So, let's unroll it and see what's inside.
You know, most of us think of ancient Egypt and we picture the big stuff, the pyramids, the mummies, the powerful pharaohs. But this artifact, it shows us a totally different side of their civilization, one that's way more technical, and yeah, I'll say it, way more scientific than many of us ever realized.
So what is this thing exactly? Well, for starters, it's not a book of spells or prayers. It's the world's oldest known surgical guide, a serious, organized medical text that's all about one thing: physical trauma. We're talking broken bones, deep wounds, dislocated joints, the kinds of injuries you'd get from building a pyramid or maybe fighting in a battle. And this is what makes it so mind-blowing. The tone isn't mystical or chaotic, it's calm. It's structured, it's analytical. Honestly, it reads less like an ancient scroll and more like a modern clinical manual, just methodically going through medical cases one by one.
And that structured approach, it is definitely not an accident. The papyrus is basically a playbook for an ancient surgeon, letting out this incredibly logical, systematic process for how to handle trauma.
Okay, check this out. Every single medical case in the papyrus follows a very precise 5-step formula. It always starts with a title, something like Instructions for a Gaping Wound in the Head. Then comes the physical examination, what you should look for, what you should feel. Based only on that evidence, the physician makes a diagnosis. Then they predict the outcome with a prognosis, and then they outline a treatment. This step-by-step process, observation to conclusion, that's the absolute foundation of modern medicine.
And the organization doesn't even stop there. The entire document is structured anatomically. It literally starts with injuries to the head, then it moves down to the neck, then the chest, the spine, and so on. This head-to-toe approach shows this really deliberate, systematic way of thinking about the human body.
But maybe the most surprising thing about this ancient text is just how incredibly honest it is. The authors weren't out there promising miracle cures. Nope. They were guided by experience and by evidence. And you can see this realism perfectly in their triage system. The papyrus sorts every injury into one of 3 outcomes. First, an ailment I will treat, basically for cases they were pretty sure they could fix. Second, an ailment with which I will contend, for the tougher, more uncertain cases. But it's that third category that is just, wow, it's truly remarkable.
An ailment not to be treated. Think about that. These physicians were told that some injuries were simply beyond their ability to heal. This wasn't about wishful thinking or hoping for a god to intervene. It was a cold, hard assessment based on evidence and past experience. And let me tell you, recognizing the limits of your own knowledge, that is a profoundly scientific act.
And that right there is what puts the Edwin Smith Papyrus in a completely different league from other medical texts of the era. While so many of them were all about spells, incantations, and appealing to the gods, this papyrus stands apart. Its entire foundation is built on physical observation, clinical examination, and hard evidence.
So, just how revolutionary was this kind of thinking, really? To get a feel for that, we have to put it into its proper historical context. So, scholars think the original knowledge in this papyrus dates all the way back to around 2500 BC. Let that sink in. This disciplined, surgical way of thinking was happening at the exact same time the Great Pyramid of Giza was being built. The same brilliant civilization that was capable of these monumental feats of engineering was also capable of this kind of detailed technical thought.
And the text reveals a really advanced understanding of the body for its time. The authors connected head trauma to paralysis and problems with speech. They actually described the brain and the membranes around it, And they understood that an injury in one spot could affect a totally different part of the body. These are connections that wouldn't be fully explored in Europe for literally thousands of years. And the treatments themselves were just as practical, no magic involved. Every single action was directly linked to the diagnosis. They stitched up wounds, they set and bandaged fractures, and they applied a mix of grease and honey, which, as we now know, actually has natural antibacterial properties. Pretty amazing. So, what's the big takeaway from all this? What should we learn from this incredible document? Because it's so much more than just an ancient artifact. It carries a legacy that honestly still resonates today. You know, when you read through the cases, you get this incredibly human feel. You can almost picture the ancient physician, thousands of years ago, kneeling next to an injured worker, asking those same urgent questions we'd ask today. Is the skull fractured? Is this person going to live? This isn't just abstract knowledge. It's a record of real people trying to save real lives. The core message of the papyrus just echoes across 4,500 years, and it's this: look carefully, think clearly, and let evidence guide your judgment. That right there is the timeless principle at the very heart of science itself. And that leads us to a final thought. This papyrus shows us a world that was far more rational, far more methodical than we often give it credit for. So it leaves us with a really important question. If we were this wrong about ancient medicine, what other assumptions about the past are just sitting there waiting to be overturned by the next big discovery?